Greetings, I'm Dr. David Gersten. Today I'm going to introduce you to a health map that I developed. The health map is a cause and effect explanation of how chronic illness develops. Once we understand how chronic illness develops, we're in a better position to know how to recover from that illness. Why do people get sick? Is illness caused by a virus, bacteria, parasite, or genetics? Yes and no. There are 4 main levels of the health map. So let's dive in and take a quick look at those 4 levels. Level 1 has to do with primary causes. Level 2 is toxic effects. Level 3 is how the body responds to primary causes. And the body responds to all primary causes through inflammation, the stress response, and mind-body adaptation. Level 4 is metabolic chaos, which includes disturbances of biochemistry and bioelectrical fields. Now let's dive into level 1, which has to do with primary causes. Some of the main primary causes are infection, toxicity, protein deficiency, stress, and genetics. I've outlined 32 categories of primary causes, so take your time reviewing each item. For now, let's look at the main categories. They are 1. Toxicity, 2. Infection, 3. Prescription medication side effects, 4. Digestive problems, 5. Nutrition, 6. Shallow breathing, 7. Lack of sunlight, 8. General and structural issues, 9. Hyper or hypothermia, 10. Mental, emotional, social, and spiritual factors, 11. Heredity, 12. Electromagnetic fields, and 13. Disconnection from barefoot contact with the earth and its natural bioelectrical fields. Disconnection from barefoot contact with the earth and its natural bioelectrical fields is important and especially relevant to the health map. Reconnection to barefoot contact with the earth's bioelectrical field dramatically decreases inflammation and the stress response, which is part of level 3 of the health map, namely how the body responds to primary causes. Nearly 30 years ago, I developed a very simple cause and effect map of chronic illness. I used a metaphor of dominoes collapsing in this early model of the health map. It dealt with level 1, primary causes, and level 4, metabolic chaos. Infection is one domino, one primary cause. Behind it, metaphorically, are 10,000 other dominoes which represent disturbances of biochemistry. When the infection domino falls, 10,000 dominoes of biochemistry collapse in disarray. It's not enough to treat or kill an infection. Those 10,000 other dominoes will remain scattered in disarray, and they need to be treated. If you had 7 primary causes, metaphorically, you'd have 70,000 dominoes of biochemistry collapsing. You've got to treat the primary causes, and you've got to treat the disturbances of biochemistry that fall when those primary cause dominoes fall. In my experience, any chronic illness has large numbers of metabolic abnormalities. Because the body by dry weight is about 65% amino acids, most of those metabolic abnormalities are disturbances of amino acid chemistry. On the right side of level 4, you'll see disturbances of bioelectrical fields. I believe these fields are intimately entwined with biochemistry. After working with people with chronic illness for 30+ years, I knew that the simple domino model was not sufficient to explain the complex cascade of events that leads to chronic illness. I spent most of 2006 developing a 4-step health map, a cause and effect model that helps explain all chronic illness with the exception of structural musculoskeletal issues. Medicine has tried to understand illness through risk factors. The American Heart Association lists 12 risk factors for heart disease, and they include age, LDL and HDL cholesterol, triglycerides, high blood pressure, obesity, and diabetes. Risk factors are important, but they don't tell us anything about cause and effect mechanisms. So let's take a little deeper look now at the health map, starting with level 1, primary causes. Chronic illness is caused by a minimum of 7 primary causes. One of those primary causes is inevitably some form of stress. I use the term stress factor to refer to acute overwhelming stress, chronic stress, unresolved conflict, long-term effects of child abuse or neglect, and trauma at any point in life. The stress factor is not the same as the stress response, which is part of level 3, how the body responds to primary causes. The stress factor is usually responsible for causing 25 to 75% of the illness. Protein deficiency can cause about 25% of the total picture. I look at the stress factor the same way that I look at mercury toxicity or a protein deficiency. They're all potential primary causes. Each primary cause produces a certain percentage of the total illness. We need to remove the mercury, we need to boost protein intake, and we also need to deal with the stress factor with targeted mental fitness techniques such as meditation, use of the breath, mental imagery, and a variety of trauma techniques. It's important to understand that it doesn't matter if a primary cause is physical, like an infection, or mental emotional, like the anxiety of a new job. Each contributes its percentage. Any way you cut this pie, the total causality is 100%. We covered level 1 primary causes. Let's move on to level 2, toxic effects. One primary cause, toxicity, often leads to toxic effects, which is level 2 in the health map. The words toxin and poison refer to slightly different issues, but both refer to substances that can harm us in a variety of different ways. Toxic effects in the health map refers to two main issues. First, toxic and poisonous substances, and second, medication side effects. A medication is created to treat a specific symptom, illness, or biochemical abnormality. A medication side effect is an unintended toxic problem that is not related to the specific goal of the medication. Adverse drug reactions kill 128,000 Americans per year, making it one of the top 5 killers. Adverse drug reactions cause 1.9 million Americans to be hospitalized each year. In addition, 840,000 adverse drug reactions are caused by medications given during hospitalization. Each year, 60,000 children require hospital treatment for a drug reaction, and millions experience adverse drug reactions caused by over-the-counter medications. These figures explain why adverse drug reactions play a significant role in the health map. I believe that ever-increasing toxicity and inflammation are the biggest causes of chronic illness. I began to treat chronic fatigue syndrome, or CFS, starting in the 1980s. The best term for chronic fatigue syndrome is CFS/ME, stands for chronic fatigue syndrome, myalgic encephalopathy. In this video, I'll refer to chronic fatigue syndrome, or CFS. CFS in 2017 is different from the early cases of CFS. The illness is more complicated, harder to treat, and takes longer to treat now. Toxicity isn't just part of CFS, it's part of every health condition. It's very difficult to provide exact numbers about toxicity, but one study estimates that we're exposed to 700,000 different toxins every day. More than 84,000 chemicals are put into the food we eat. A study in 2005 found that there are, on average, 387 different toxins in umbilical cord blood. If you have 100 different toxins in your body, each of those is a separate primary cause, and each toxin can have specific acute and chronic effects. The main 6 categories of non-pharmaceutical toxins are 1. Irritants, such as formaldehyde and ammonia, and these burn or irritate the eyes, respiratory tract, skin, and mucous membranes. 2. Asphyxiants, like carbon monoxide. These are compounds that prevent the uptake or use of inhaled oxygen. 3. Anesthetics and narcotics, which depress the central nervous system. 4. Carcinogens like benzene, asbestos, and arsenic, which cause cancer. 5. Sensitizers such as formaldehyde and nickel salts. These are toxins whose repeated exposure leads to allergic reactions. And 6. Reproductive toxins such as benzene, toluene, and heavy metals, which cause in utero damage to the fetus. Toxins can cause cellular damage, problems with biochemistry, and organ damage. The most common kinds of organ damage involve the nervous system, liver, the heart, immune system, reproductive organs, and the skin. We have universal toxic effects. Where there is a toxin, there is inflammation. And where there is a toxin, glutathione arrives to detoxify that toxin. In the process, glutathione often gets depleted. Glutathione is a tripeptide made of 3 amino acids, cysteine, glycine, and glutamic acid. Glutathione has at least 5 major functions. First, it's our main detoxifier. Second, it's the master antioxidant of the 5 core antioxidants. 3, glutathione is an essential nutrient cofactor for the Krebs cycle production of ATP. ATP is the molecule of energy. Fourth, it protects DNA from oxidative stress during cell division. And 5, it metabolizes carcinogens. When we're discussing metabolic chaos in detail, we'll see that glutathione, this key nutrient for the production of ATP, often gets depleted in chronic illness. Level 2 is about toxic effects, and it includes medication side effects. Let me illustrate a common medication side effect related to level 2, namely antibiotics. Let's say that an antibiotic is prescribed with a specific goal of treating a middle ear infection. Antibiotics, while potentially helpful and life-saving, almost always kill billions of friendly intestinal bacteria, causing an imbalance in the 3 to 5 pounds of healthy gut bacteria. This imbalance is called dysbiosis, and that's an unwanted side effect of antibiotics. Dysbiosis can then cause malabsorption and inflammation. Given that the air, food, and water are increasingly polluted, that we are exposed to thousands of toxins, and that we take medications with serious side effects, level 2 is part of all health concerns. Sometimes toxic effects play a very big role in the development and continuation of a person's health challenge. Sometimes the toxic effects of level 2 are minor. Level 3 of the health map is about how the body responds to primary causes, which involves the stress response, inflammation, and mind-body adaptation. Level 3 is a large part of our internal healing environment. The stress response involves fight-or-flight biochemistry and activity of the autonomic nervous system. Inflammation is the second part of level 3. The inflammatory response walls off infection and injury and attempts to kill pathogens like bacteria, viruses, yeast, parasites, and mycoplasma. Medicine's explanation of inflammation has been somewhat lacking. Without going into great detail, let me say this. Inflammation involves the production of huge numbers of free radicals by the immune system. One group of inflammatory free radicals are cytokines. Free radicals are positively charged molecules which strip free electrons from healthy tissue in order to get neutralized. When we cut ourselves, we could have millions of bacteria in that cut by the end of one day. The inflammatory response essentially cooks those bacteria. With a cut, the inflammation is gone within a few days. 80 chronic diseases are believed to be caused by chronic inflammation, which is a major part of level 3. The third way we respond to primary causes is through mind-body adaptation. The way we respond to primary causes is part physical and part mental-emotional, although the emotional part is rarely explored in depth. The power of the mind is huge. We don't know where the mind stops and the body begins. The term mind-body conveys this unity of mind and body. We know that resilience affects our physical health. So does hardiness. So does a sense of purpose, faith, persistence, gratitude, and the ability to forgive. When we are chronically stressed, that stress affects us mentally and physically. Let me use the metaphor of war to explain mind-body adaptation, which is how we regroup and then move forward after a difficult challenge. In war, there are many battles. Perhaps in the first battle, we lose a hill. We retreat and regroup. Eventually, we have reorganized and are able to take back the hill we lost and move forward, advancing until we win this war. In In this metaphor, the entire mind-body and mind-body connection are adapting, shifting, and changing. What is important is that health and illness include the assessment of mental, social, and spiritual factors, along with the assessment and treatment of unresolved conflict, trauma, and neglect. All of these have a profound effect on our health and well-being. The metaphor of war is one way to look at things. Others use balance, rather than the metaphor of war, as a way of understanding how we respond to primary causes. Mind-body adaptation is about connection to self, others, nature, and God or a higher power. It's also about will. We've all heard about someone, let's say a grandmother, who was terminally ill and was told that she had 2 months to live. But this woman was determined to live 8 months to see her daughter's wedding. She lived to see the wedding and died days later. Similarly, many people with cancer are told by doctors that they have a month to live. And many of these people die right on schedule. Their sense of hope and their will to live vanished when they were given their death sentence. The will of the mother of the bride was very strong enough to keep her entire being whole and even vibrant. The state of the mind-body adaptation can heal in spite of the odds. Now, we're looking at level 4, metabolic chaos, which involves bioelectrical fields and biochemistry. On the left side, you can see disturbances of biochemistry, and on the right side, you can see disturbances of bioelectrical fields. How are these two related? Bioelectrical fields and biochemistry are completely intertwined and inseparable. Let's look at bioelectrical fields. Most parts of the body generate a coherent bioelectrical field. We have electrocardiograms to measure electrical activity of the heart, electroencephalograms to tell us about brain electrical activity, EMGs or electromyography to measure the electrical activity of muscle, nerve conduction studies to measure the electrical activity of nerves, and the galvanic skin response, which measures electrical activity of the skin. As I first thought about this part of the health map, it occurred to me that the only reason doctors know about things like an EKG is to find out if you've had a heart attack. I asked myself, in this great mystery of life, did bioelectrical fields become part of us just so doctors could diagnose illness? I don't think so. Lack of barefoot contact with the earth is one primary cause, and it has everything to do with the earth's electrical field. There are two aspects of that electrical field. First, the earth has a frequency called the Schumann resonance, which averages 7.8 hertz. That's like a drum beating about 8 times per second. This rhythm shot up to 36 hertz in January of 2017, and no one knows why. Second part of the Earth's bioelectrical field is this. The Earth is covered with an ocean of free electrons. When we're in barefoot contact with the Earth, billions of free electrons enter our body every second. The infinite supply of the Earth's free electrons can put out the fire of inflammation and free radicals. By one estimate, there are 70 trillion cells in the human body. Each cell undergoes about 10,000 chemical reactions per second. Each second, our body experiences about 700 quadrillion biochemical reactions. So total body chemistry is a swirl of 700 quadrillion reactions per second, or what I refer to as metabolic soup. That soup is mainly water. Our bodies are about 2/3 water. If you subtract water from total body mass, more than half of what we are is amino acids. Metaphorically, in chronic illness, that metabolic soup is moving counterclockwise. When treatment is starting to work, that metabolic soup starts to move clockwise metaphorically. This notion of one vast metabolic soup provides more insight than does a chem panel, which provides a snapshot of a tiny part of biochemistry. Because the body by dry weight is about 65% amino acids, most of the disturbances of biochemistry involve amino acids, so amino acid testing is critical to understanding level 4 of the health map. Level 4 has to do with all nutrients, including amino acids, essential fatty acids, carbohydrates, vitamins, minerals, and water. Most nutritional lab testing examines level 4 disturbances of biochemistry. We have to look at levels 1, 2, and 3 to understand what's happening at level 4. Level 4 is very deep. There's many sublayers to biochemistry. At the bottom of level 4, you'll see ATP. The domino effect explained by levels 1, 2, and 3 continues on and on. Eventually, nearly all disturbances of our body and mind impair the Krebs cycle, a reaction that takes place in the mitochondria in every cell. The mitochondria are referred to as our energy factories. The Krebs cycle produces ATP, the molecule of energy. The body uses ATP to build everything, including building proteins, hormones, body tissues, and neurotransmitters. We also use ATP to break down various biochemical compounds. 80% of the oxygen we breathe is burned up in the Krebs cycle. So that fact tells us how important it is to make ATP. With chronic illness, energy chemistry usually becomes impaired. While we require the Krebs cycle and ATP in order to live, we should be aware of a problem that's caused by the normal production of ATP. Every cell produces 10 billion free radicals every day in the production of ATP. Our body is made up of about 70 trillion cells. The number of free radicals produced every day in the production of ATP is 10 billion times 70 trillion cells. That number cannot be adequately understood through a standard blood test. Using the metaphor of dominoes, let's say each domino is 1/4 of an inch thick. If we lined up all the free radical dominoes produced in the Krebs cycle in one day, that line would go past the nearest star. I use a metaphor like dominoes because very few of us can picture a tiny molecule, a free radical, an atom, or an electron. Metabolic chaos is many levels deep. The black rectangles in the health map represent dominoes. Illness is not simply a question of one cause and one effect. Illness is more like a cascade of collapsing dominoes. With metabolic chaos, all 70 trillion cells have significant nutritional and metabolic problems. As the cascade progresses, there's a potential collapse of several final common pathways. The green circles are about these final common pathways. Glutathione, or GSH, which we've already touched on, often becomes depleted. Glutathione has many functions. It's one of the most important cofactors for the production of ATP, the molecule of energy. It's the master antioxidant and also our body's natural detoxifier. For each molecule of toxicity, glutathione arrives to help remove or detoxify that toxin. As the toxic burden grows, glutathione starts to get depleted. When glutathione is depleted, we start to become overwhelmed by toxicity, and we are likely to develop high levels of inflammation throughout the body. A second final common pathway is a shift toward the sympathetic fight-or-flight nervous system, the SNS, and away from the parasympathetic nervous system, or the PNS. The parasympathetic nervous system is activated by things like rest, massage, a walk in nature, or a warm bath. That's what parasympathetic nervous system activity feels like. The shift towards fight-or-flight physiology impairs the production of ATP. In cardiovascular disease, the collapse of nitric oxide, or NO, is the final common pathway. Nitric oxide does everything good that our blood vessels need. I'm going to briefly review what we've covered so far. Whether you have 7 or 27 primary causes, the total causality of primary causes will be 100%. A protein deficiency can cause about 25% of the total, mercury toxicity 10%, viral infections 10%, candida 20%, and 15% for not getting enough exercise. The stress factor contributes somewhere between 25 and 75% of the whole. These estimates are largely subjective. But if someone tells me that their stress factor is 0, my experience tells me that's not true. All chronic illness involves mental emotional factors. If someone tells me their stress factor is 95 or 100% of the total cause, That's also probably incorrect, because disturbances in biochemistry are part of all chronic illness. Each level of the health map is important. Level 3, how the body responds to primary causes, does not exist without Level 1. Part of Level 3 is about inflammation. Medicine has determined that at least 80 chronic diseases are caused by inflammation. Heart disease, whose mechanism is inflammation, kills 610,000 Americans per year. And another inflammatory disease, stroke, kills 130,000. 40 million of us suffer with the inflammatory disease arthritis, and 1.6 million with inflammatory bowel disease. These are Level 3 diseases. We must diagnose and treat primary causes and toxic effects, and we must treat inflammation using every reasonable modality, whether conventional or alternative. For most people, the process of choosing which nutritional supplement to take is an educated guess, like throwing a dart at a target hoping you get lucky. That approach costs a lot of time, money, hope, and energy. The health map provides a systematic way to make those decisions and those recommendations in an educated, logical, and systematic way. Put another way, this approach is about lab work, not guesswork. Now, let's put the health map to the test by looking at a variety of simple health challenges before looking at the complexity of chronic fatigue syndrome. Let's start with the thorn cut. Level 1, the primary cause is you get cut by a thorn, and it hurts and bleeds for a while. Level 2, toxic effects, is absent. The treatment is you pull the thorn out. Level 3, your body responds with a brief period of inflammation which makes the area red, swollen, warm, and tender. Assuming this is a simple situation, the inflammatory response heals the wound within a few days. That's a healthy inflammatory response. Next, we'll look at a Cobra Bite. A Cobra Bite involves Level 1 and 2 of the health map. Level 1, the primary cause, is a Cobra Bite. If a cobra bites you, you will experience Level 2 toxic effects. The venom of a cobra is neurotoxic and leads to an inability to breathe. The individual is likely to die within 30 minutes, so Levels 3 and 4 don't get involved. Next, we're looking at a rattlesnake bite, which involves Levels 1, 2, and 3. So Level 1, the primary cause, is the rattlesnake bite. Level 2, the toxic effects of the venom cause pain and tissue damage. The venom is neurotoxic, damaging the central nervous system, and also hemotoxic, killing red blood cells. Level 3, how the body responds to primary causes. The initial bite produces a severe inflammatory response, especially in the fascia, which is the tough fibrous tissue involving muscle and bone. Next, we look at the bite of a brown recluse spider, which involves Levels 1, 2, 3, and 4. Level 1, the primary cause, is the bite of a brown recluse spider. Level 2, the toxic effects include severe pain, a blackened bite area, and sometimes systemic toxicity that damages cell membranes. Level 3, how the body responds to primary cause. This bite causes a massive, painful, inflammatory response which can go on for many months. Level 4, metabolic chaos. Because toxicity and the inflammatory response are so profound and drawn out, Level 4 gets involved. When you're running a fever of up to 104 degrees for many months, you're eating poorly and getting dehydrated, total body biochemistry can become impaired. I should mention that while the brown recluse spider has a bad reputation, their bite kills fewer than 5 people per year in America. The point in discussing thorns and bites from a cobra, rattlesnake, and brown recluse spider is to help you think about the 4 levels of the health map with some very simple examples. Most chronic illness will involve all 4 levels, but some primary causes like a cobra bite are so powerful that they completely overwhelm our internal healing environment, and Level 3 does not get engaged. With practice, with any health issue, you can run through the 4 steps very quickly. It takes no more time to use the health map in understanding how chronic illness unfolds than to use no map at all. Now, let's look at chronic fatigue syndrome, CFS. CFS is a complex illness caused by numerous primary causes and which involves all 4 levels. In CFS, level 4, metabolic chaos, is much more complicated than it is in the examples we've looked at so far. Level 1, the primary causes. Infections play a major role in CFS. Viruses like Epstein-Barr, cytomegalo, and HHV6 have been linked to CFS. The infection called mycoplasma may be a primary cause. So may an infection with candida. Heavy metals like mercury have been implicated in some cases, as has MTBE, a gasoline additive which is in the drinking water across the United States, Canada, and much of the world. Fluoride in our water is as toxic as mercury. Severe emotional conflict or trauma is a common primary cause in CFS. That does not mean that chronic fatigue syndrome is a mental disorder. It's not. But the stress factor plays an important role as one primary cause. Level 2, toxic effects. Potentially, a person can have hundreds of different toxins in their body, each with different kinds of toxicity. MTBE toxicity, which is very common, is going to deplete glutathione. Most toxins deplete glutathione. Antibiotic side effects often play a role in CFS. Antibiotics can kill intestinal bacteria, causing dysbiosis and setting us up for problems with digestion and absorption. Level 3, how the body responds to primary causes. Wherever we have infection or toxicity, the inflammatory response will be there. CFS is associated with significant, invisible internal inflammation. Part of level 3 is the stress response, fight or flight response. It's mediated by the pituitary and adrenal glands along with the autonomic nervous system. Repairing adrenal exhaustion and restoring healthy levels of cortisol and DHEA is a major issue in CFS. Level 4, metabolic chaos. In CFS, disturbances of total body chemistry are huge. These people can easily have up to 50 symptoms. Each amino acid abnormality will produce a specific symptom in addition to the role amino acids play in building protein and hormones. Much of the action is in level 4. In CFS, metabolic chaos spins out of control, eventually leading to depleted glutathione, increased sympathetic nervous system activity, and impaired production of ATP, the molecule of energy. CFS is a model for how almost everything can go wrong. With each of these examples, from thorns and animal bites to CFS, we can explain treatment that is required to heal the 4 levels of the health map, but it would take a long time to explore all treatment options. The purpose of this video is to introduce you to this cause and effect health map that helps explain how chronic illness develops and how chronic illness is reversed. I have not heard or read about other comprehensive health maps. Throughout 2006, I worked on the health map, and I've used it to help understand what is happening with virtually all of my patients. I understand all the lab work in light of the health map. I understand each nutritional supplement that I recommend in the light of the health map. The health map can also be used to help understand how and where meditation and mental imagery are working. I think that it's critical that medicine starts to work with a legitimate cause and effect map of chronic illness. Send this video to your family, friends, and doctors if you'd like to see this information spread. In that way, you can help move medicine out of a reductionistic view of illness and towards a holistic view that embraces the best of conventional and alternative medicine. When doctors learn about the health map, they gain the ability to look at the complexity of chronic illness in a way that improves diagnosis and makes for better recommendations. Chronic illness isn't just complex. It tends to be extremely complex. But when doctor and patient can look at all the pieces of this puzzle together, one coherent whole arises. Thank you for listening and taking the time to understand this cause and effect map. After I say goodbye for today, you may want to think of a symptom or illness that you have. Go through the 4 levels and see if you can gain a better understanding of your health challenge. If you would like for me to create a video in which I review and try to explain your issues, leave a comment here or send me an email, which you can find at my website, drdavidgersten.com. Have a great day.